registered as a passenger vehicle.
Public automobile.
No, it's a private, you're using it in a private way. It's actually your private automobile because you're not using it in commerce, you're not using it for hire. And that's where they got you. And believe me, I only found 3 cases that talked about public automobiles. And I don't have a public automobile, I have a private automobile. And that's where their authority ends. And the next ticket that I have to fight, I'm going in with that.
Okay, so those 3 cases, you think they define what a public automobile
They
is?
did define it.
All right, okay.
They did define it.
So
it came under insurance cases. There's nothing out there in the public that would describe it other than all 3 of them were insurance company cases.
Thank you.
So now you got something to at least fight with. And the red light camera is the same thing. They're going to get rid of them because you can't face your accuser. They're going to be gone. It's a waste of money. Total waste.
I have a question that's kind of more of a statement. Maybe you could speak on it a little bit, because you just touched on something that I cover extensively in my book about private property ownership versus public property ownership. Is public property not property that every individual in America has a right to exist upon and use, whereas private property is exclusively the property of the owner?
You can't exist on it that per se exist. You're allowed access to it.
That's what I meant, more of access than, like, you can't sleep in a public park, but you can absolutely go there and play tennis if you want. But that's just public property that the average individual can make use of, whereas private property, you would need permission from the owner to use.
Yes, you need permission from the owner to use private property.
And that's what all of our automobiles are, is
Okay.
private.
That's what rules are though too. And I know you talked earlier about sovereignty, and I can give you a quick rundown on sovereignty. It doesn't take very much to realize that everybody is born sovereign. And I'm going to explain to you why that you are being ordered to follow their rules is because you're not acting like a sovereign. You don't act like a sovereign, they're going to presume, which they love to do, that you're not a sovereign.
And most of what they operate upon is presumption and assumption. Thank you very much.
Okay, there are maxims of law, and one of the maxims of law is you cannot be greater, the created cannot be greater than the creator. So, as God being the creator, you can never be greater because he created you. And you, as the created government. And the government that you created can never be greater than you. That you're sovereign. Now, the government came along and created 14th Amendment citizens. Now, those 14th Amendment citizens can never be more powerful than the government. And that's why they presume you're a 14th Amendment citizen. Because you cannot be more powerful than what created your status.
Makes sense.
So, if you're wondering why they're beating you up and writing all these tickets and things like that, it's because they presume you're a 14th Amendment citizen. And that 14th Amendment did not free the slave, but it brought everyone down to the slave level under the government, because the government created the 14th Amendment. So there you go. That's it in a nutshell. And don't let them presume. Always rebut everything that they tell you along that line. Because if you don't rebut it, then they're going to presume that you're yielding to what they say. Always. And if they don't answer something you say in the courtroom, then it should be presumed that you are correct because they're not rebutting it. That might answer your question, Jeff. You're making a statement and they're telling you to move on. They've just admitted liability. Any questions about the 14th Amendment? I'm not a specialist on it, but I know a little bit about a lot of things. Okay.
I'll ask a question about the 14th Amendment more for people who are going to be viewing this online and people here, but the 14th Amendment is something that was created by government. So those are really privileges that they're giving you. Those are not the rights you are born with. How would you...
That was created by
that?
corporate government.
Right.
Okay.
Not the de jure government, the
No.
de facto government.
And de jure is original, natural, organic, and de facto is actually force. It's overpowering and trying to take control.
Would you agree that one could only become a 14th Amendment citizen by their own signed voluntary consent?
No, they will presume that you're a 14th Amendment citizen right out of the box.
And if you don't refute that assumption and presumption, then they might as well just say you are one, and you might as well...
They will say you are one.
Right.
And that's where person came from. That's where this fiction came from. So you're basically a legal fiction, and everything I read earlier about corporations, associations, and natural persons, the natural persons is part of that. There's something in law, one of the maxims of law I have right here, and it's a Supreme Court case, and it aids people in understanding what it is. To aid the statutory construction which logically applies herein, no citure, and I'm butchering this up because it's Latin, and my Latin isn't what it should be. Associus, and that a word is or may be known from accompanying words. Okay? The meaning of questionable words or phrases in a statute may be ascertained by reference to the meaning of the words or phrases associated with it. So, everything associated with, I mentioned in the way of persons, was fictional. Because you can't have Rottweiler, German Shepherd, Labrador Retriever, elephant. It's not all the same thing. It doesn't belong together. So what they're doing is they're naming all things that are the same. There's all kinds of fruits that are the same, all kinds of vegetables that are the same, all the same, because if they put it in this book, an elephant is some kind of dog. Plain and simple. So you know there's multiple definitions for person. I have 2 or 3 pages of definitions for person, and they just use one in here. And this is the one that counts when you're in vehicle and traffic. Let's see if I can find something else, because I really did want to touch on definitions over here. So, and most of these laws start with no person shall. So you know right off the bat, you're not involved in that, because you're not a person. But they are assuming you are. They presume you are.
Or an entity or something?
A legal fiction.
Legal fiction?
Because the courts, being incorporated, and they are all incorporated, and they're all for profit, a corporation, a fictitious corporation, cannot go against a living, breathing, carbon-based human being, God's creation. So they have to create this persona for you, and they go after that. It's called a status.
Yeah. So theoretically, what you're saying to me is that even though we're carbon-based, they've decided to uncarbonize us?
Nope, they're calling you something else. They're using what they call a straw man. And straw man is in Black's Law. By the way, if you can buy a dictionary, I don't recommend Black's Law. It's almost it changes like the weather. Ever since the 4th edition, it's gone completely downhill. I'll find straw man for you. Everyone thinks it's just a patriot word, but it isn't. It really doesn't exist in law. Strongman, I have Black's Law, 8th edition, page 1461. And the first definition for strongman is a fictitious person, especially one that is weak or flawed. And second is a tenuous and exaggerated counter-argument that an advocate puts forward for the sole purpose of disproving it, also termed strawman argument. Third definition, third party used in some transactions. So that's what you are in court. You're the third party used in a transaction. Let's see, the third party used in some transactions as a temporary transferee to allow the principal parties to accomplish something that is otherwise impermissible. Are you starting to grasp that?
Say that again?
Third one is one of my favorites. The third party, this is a straw man, a third party used in some transactions as a temporary transferee to allow the principal parties, which is you and the court, to accomplish something that is otherwise impermissible. And what is impermissible? A fiction going after a real, live, breathing man or woman. That's impermissible. Can't do that. Fictions can only go against fictions. People can only go against people.
So if I'm the person that told me I'm the, what do you want to call it, a straw man? And I said, wait, I'm not a straw man. I'm a carbon-based human and a human being. And but everything you're saying, am I now treated as a human being, or am I still subject to the straw man thing?
They'll still treat you like that because the straw man is on your driver's license in all caps. It's on your marriage license in all caps. It's on your mailing address. And when they send you court papers, your name's in all caps.
Okay.
So they're telling you quite blatantly that they're going after you and you're going to transact through your straw man. And when they call you up to the bench, you're answering to the straw man's name because it sounds just exactly like yours. I hope I'm not putting you guys on overload. There's a lot of information and I'd like to clarify as much as possible. Yes?
Which is, I think, what happened at my last court appearance. I think I did everything right up until the moment where the judge said, is there in the courtroom? And I responded to that. And I believe at that moment, I basically gave him permission to do what he did.
You did.
And now,
Explain that.
should I not have answered to that? Should I have walked out of the courtroom? Should I have refuted that? How do you handle a situation like that?
Well, for the ticket, you're only really liable to make an appearance, and you've done that. So that should be the end of your story. Jeff answered to the straw name when it was called out without clarifying that he was there to represent in that issue. Did you file a UCC one?
I did not. I simply invoked it orally. And I also tried to present my license, which I wrote it on.